Carbohydrates are important, and we must always remember that when we talk about metabolism, we talk about two things at once: catabolism and anabolism. We build up when we want to store, and we break down when we want to harvest and we want to get energy. So our body is constantly shifting the state of metabolism, either from catabolism to anabolism, or from anabolism to catabolism, turning this one off, turning that one on. But both cannot happen at the same time. You cannot have anabolism and metabolism happening at the same time. So it's like a seesaw. If one is up, the other one is down. If one is down, the other one is up. So what dictates if you will be in a state of anabolism or if you will be in a state of catabolism? That is dependent on the energy expenditure. Are you requiring energy? Are you pushing your body to use energy? Are you running the marathon? Are you running on the treadmill? Or are you lazy sitting down? If you are sitting down, then your body is going to initiate storing of this energy. But if you are burning, then you have to break down, these macromolecules. We said we have many of them. It's not just one. Proteins, lipids, carbohydrates, and nucleic acids. So we said part of the nucleic acid was the ATP. So we break down, we catabolize ATP to harvest energy. So the state we are in is the main determinant of whether are we turning on catabolism and off anabolism, or on anabolism and off catabolism. So how do we turn things on? How do we turn things off? It is the enzymes. So there are enzymes, a whole set of enzymes that are responsible for initiating anabolism if I need to store energy. And there are a whole set of enzymes responsible for initiating catabolism if I want to get energy. So now let's go back to GIBS, free energy, delta G. So what did we learn about delta G, or what's known as GIBS, who discovered them, free energy. This free energy is not at all free, but it's free from the molecule. So remember when we described the anabolism and catabolism as exergonic, endergonic. You have to have excellent understanding of what exergonic means, what endergonic mean. So if I have a molecule, this molecule can be a sugar. This molecule can be a protein. This molecule could be a fatty acid. This molecule could be a nucleic acid, like ATP. But in the end, it will have a bond. So this bond, CC, it could be a bond inside a sugar, inside fructose, inside galactose, inside glucose. It could be a bond in the amino acid, right? In the amino acid. That could be a bond between the alpha carbon and the carboxylic terminal. Remember this CC here. This CC could be a part of my fatty acid. Remember, fatty acid looks like this. Fatty acid look like a glycerol backbone. It has an OH, a glycerol. This is, you need to know your glycerol. This is glycerol. It look like that. Glycerol. This is glycerol. And what are these? If this is glycerol, this is my glycerol. Some students, I said, what is glycerol? And they said, it's a sugar, because they heard glyco. They think glycerol is the same thing as glycol, like glycolipid or glycoprotein. Wrong. Glyco is one thing and glycerol is another. This is one of the building blocks of lipids. So glycerol has this structure. And what are these? These are the free fatty acids. So they also have an OH. And they have a long chain of carbons. And this is another fatty acid. It has long chain of carbon. That's the third one. They always come in three. So now what do we have? we have one glycerol, and 3 free fatty acid. Free fatty acid. Free fatty acid. And free fatty acid. That is them in a state of they are monomers now. These are monomers. These are monomers. So I need to do anabolism, so I need to hook them up. How did we say things get attached? Dehydration. Excellent. So who's gonna donate my OH? Always my OH. The same thing with let me draw the amino acid. The amino acid look like that. Alpha carbon with 4 terminals. On the left always is the amino terminal with 3 H's, and it has an R group, and it has a hydrogen at top, and it has a carboxylic terminal with an OH. Then the next amino acid is going to look like that. Alpha carbon with an R group, N with 3 H's, and you have a carboxylic terminal and a hydrogen. So the same thing. These are my 2 amino acids. If I want to hook them up together, who's going to donate my OH? It's always, that's why we call it the carboxylic acid. So I'm suffering from alkalosis, and my pH is so high, I have no hydrogen proton. So who's going to act like a buffer? It's this OH. It's going to say, don't worry, you have no OH, I'll give you my H. So it's going to donate the H for you. It's going to get a minus charge. And if you have too much hydrogen proton, you're suffering from alkalosis, pH is so low, you need to get rid of these hydrogen protons. The NH will say, don't worry, I'll pick up some. And it's going to pick up an extra hydrogen, and it's going to get a hydrogen, it's going to get a plus charge. So the amino acid is a 2-in-1. It's a buffer. That's why we say the amino acid is a buffer. When you need hydrogen proton, the left side will give you hydrogen proton. When you need hydrogen proton to be unloaded from your blood because you have alkalosis, the NH terminal will take 1. So now if I need to connect these 2 amino acids, what do? It's the OH side, the carboxylic terminal will give me the OH, and the amino terminal is going to give me the H, and both of them are going to connect, and this bond is known as the peptide bond. So this is no longer a monomer now. This is a dimer, 2 of them. Yeah.
So I just want to make sure I understand you.
Yeah, sure.
So the C's that you have broken down to monomers, and then what you just showed us is a big polymer, the C's coming together, right?
So you're talking about the one on the top, or where?
So what I'm asking is like, the monomers, does that correlate to the peptide bond you just did? That's what I'm asking.
You're talking about here?
Yes.
No, this is the fatty acid. We're just reviewing now that we're going to come later to see that the same thing is happening when we join these guys.
Okay.
But yeah, these bonds, we're going to break them for energy. But now we're just establishing that we connected 2 monomers. Now we have a dimer. If there is a third one, then that's going to be a polymer. And then we're going to polymerize more and more and more. So the same thing here. These are now monomers. Yes, these are monomers. That's the first monomer. It's free fatty acid because it has OH. Okay. This is free fatty acid because it has an OH. This is free fatty acid because it has an OH. Glycerol also has an OH. Why is it not an acid? Why do we not call it an acid? This got an OH too. This guy got an OH. This has an OH. Why we don't call it an acid?
Does it not have a charge or something?
Because it doesn't have the carbonyl. Yeah. Doesn't have this. If it looked like that, oh, definitely. No, now it's an acid. But it doesn't have, just have an OH. So now, if I want to join them, so now they're a monomer. Glycerol is a monomer.
So wait, when it's double-stranded, that's an acid? Like when it's, like you see how you just have
double bond.
Double bonded. Oh.
Yeah, so double bond between oxygen and carbon. And you have an OH. So you got to have the 3 out of the 3. You got to have the oxygen, the carbon, and the OH, and all of them together, they're going to give you that acidic group. That's a carboxylic group now. That's a carboxylic group. But this is just an alcohol now with an OH. So I want to connect them now. We go back to the problem. These are 2 amino acids. I connect them with a peptide bond. So now they are dimer. Here, these guys, they are monomers. I want to connect them. So who's going to give me my OH? Please look carefully. Who's gonna give me my OH? The glycerol or the free fatty acid?
The free fatty acids.
The free fat, excellent. So this is gonna give me the OH, and what is this guy gonna give me?
The H.
The H, excellent, excellent. Who's gonna give me the OH in the bottom? Carboxylic group, and who's gonna give me the H here? Excellent. And who's gonna give me the OH? And then this is gonna give me the H. And now here, my water came out, minus H2O, minus H2O, minus H2O. And now the bond has been formed through dehydration. We remove devoid, dehydration, dehydration. So the water has come out. Now this is no longer free fatty acid and glycerol. That was back in the day when they were separate. Now when they get married, when they get attached together, they're gonna have a new name. What is that called now? Excellent. It's now called because there's three of them. Triglycerol or triglyceride. When they tell you triglycerides are up, is this guy have too much of that? While we're at it, this structure here is very important. Not only because it gives us energy, energy, that's function. So we break these bonds. When we're talking about exergonic and endergonic, we break this bond. Break this, break this, break this, break this, break this, break this. When I break this, the energy come out, So that's a form of a function, What about structurally? Can this be a structure of something?
Yes.
Yeah, what is it?
It's a cell membrane.
Excellent, excellent. So what happens now is one of the heads, one of the free fatty acid is gone. And on its place, we get instead of this, so one of these long tails is gone. In its place, you replace it with a phosphate with a negative charge and a choline group with a nitrogen. Now when they say phospholipid bilayer, the red part this is the phosphate and the choline. That's the phosphate and the choline. And the tails, these are these two guys. So that's why your membrane, as Agatha said, they are both, it's phospholipid, and it's two of them on both sides. So there's another phosphate head with choline, phosphate head with choline, phosphate head with choline, phosphate head with choline, and then the two tails. These are the long two tails. Because one of the third tail is eliminated, and in its place, we replaced it with a big phosphate minus charge and a choline. Who else has a big phosphate minus charge in our macromolecules that we learned?
Nope.
DNA, excellent, the DNA. So the 5' end of the DNA is anti-parallel. It has a minus group. So this is our two tails, and the head was replaced with a tail and a choline. So in the end, in our body, that's the macromolecule. We want energy. We're gonna break these bonds. Same thing. So now we talked about that's amino acid. That's amino acid. We went from amino acid into polymer. We went from free fatty acid into triglycerol. Then we're gonna break that down. And don't forget your nucleic acids. Your nucleic acids, you're gonna have a nitrogenous base, like adenine, A for adenine, and in addition to the adenine, you're gonna have a ribose sugar. And in addition to the ribose sugar, you're obviously gonna have your phosphate. The first one, PI, then the second one, PI, then the third one, PI. So when it was just a nucleoside, I anabolized. So I made a bond. That's the bond number 1. Then I made a second bond. That's bond number 2. Then I made a third bond. That's bond number 3. Here, that bond, I made that bond. So I'm making these bonds. 1 bond, 2 bond, 3 when it was long. Here, I made that bond, 1 bond. So you see how I'm making bonds with dehydration. I break them I lyse with water, so hydrolysis. So you see the same thing for nucleic acid. These are three different molecules sharing the same ability of being joined, broken. Anabolized, catabolized. Anabolized, catabolized. Now let's go to the last thing, which is what we are all about today, and that is the sugars. Sugars are very interesting because they don't jump from like a monomer and a dimer to a polymer. They start with, you have three building blocks for sugar. For nucleotides, you had adenine that binds with thymine, and guanine that binds with cytosine, and adenine that binds with uracil if you're RNA, adenine binds with thymine if you are DNA. But for the sugars, it's different. For sugars, you only have three monomers. The first one is glucose. Glucose. The second one is fructose. Fructose. And the last one is galactose. Galactose. These are the building blocks of sugars. And you need to know those three. Glucose, fructose, galactose. Glucose, fructose, galactose. Now, they don't exist in that form. They are broken down. That's the smallest a sugar can ever get. But they don't exist like that. They exist in three major forms. And the forms are, this is on the exam. The three of those are on the exam. Number one is you have lactose. That's the sugar of milk. The lactose is the sugar of milk. And it is made up of two monomers. And we don't just call it, they are monomers. They are monomers. But we call them monosaccharide. Monosaccharide is sugar. Monosaccharide. So when I say monosaccharide, that's that's a monomer of a sugar. Saccharide. So you have monosaccharides are glucose, fructose, and galactose. These guys are disaccharides. So your disaccharides are, these are the disaccharides. The first disaccharide is lactose. That's the milk that's the sugar of milk. Sugar or milk sugar. That's milk sugar. Milk sugar. Lactose. The second sugar we need to know really well, that is the sugar of oatmeal. The sugar of oatmeal and the sugar of grain. The grain sugar. That is known as maltose. Grain sugar. Grain sugar, oatmeal. Oatmeal sugar. Oatmeal sugar. And it is also made up of two monomers, of two of these guys. So of two of these guys. And the last one is the sucrose. Excellent. And that is the sugar, the table sugar. Sucrose, that's the sugar of the sugar cane. Sugar cane, that's the Jamaica sugar. Sugar, they have the nice sugar cane. Yeah, we have sugar cane back home too. So these sugar canes are delicious, but it's not healthy. The sugar of the sucrose, that is the sugar cane or the table sugar, the white sugar. Table sugar, known as sucrose. And it is made up of two monosaccharides. So all of these guys are disaccharide. If I tell you on the exam, glucose, fructose, galactose, sucrose, one of those is not a monosaccharide. What is it?
Sucrose.
Sucrose. If I tell you glucose, fructose, galactose, maltose, one of those is not a monosaccharide. You say is maltose. Glucose, fructose, galactose, one of those is not a disaccharide, it's not a monosaccharide, it's lactose. So far, any questions? Okay, so these guys are disaccharides. So they're made up of two. They are made up of two monosaccharide. Two monosaccharide. Otherwise, they can never be disaccharide. So they are made up of two monosaccharide. The easiest one for you to remember is the maltose of grain sugar. Is made up of double glucose. Double glucose. Double glucose. So that's your first point for next exam. What is maltose made up of? It's a disaccharide made up of what? Glucose and glucose. Fill in the blank. What are the two monosaccharides that make up for me the disaccharide maltose? Glucose and glucose. it gets easier. These 3 disaccharides, all of them, 1 out of the 2 saccharides is glucose. So glucose is on everyone. Glucose, 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 glucose. So the 3 of them, the 3 disaccharides, gotta have glucose in them. Except maltose, it got double. It has 2 glucoses. The second easiest one to remember is your milk sugar. It is made up of glucose and galactose. So you cannot be one of these guys unless you mix and match. You mix and match. You mix from the bottom, 2 from the bottom, you get 1 at the top. 2 from the bottom, you get 1 at the top. 2 from the bottom, you get 1 in the top.
Professor, you said that glucose, fructose, and galactose are the building blocks of sugar, you said?
The building blocks of the disaccharides, yeah. Yeah. So you can never have a disaccharide unless you like marry them together, like bind them. You make a dimer. These are disaccharides. So the easiest one for you to remember is the maltose because it's 2 of glucose, 2 glucose. And you also remember that no matter what disaccharide are you gotta have glucose. So every single disaccharide has 1 out of the 2 glucose, glucose, glucose. Only maltose has double glucose. It made it easier for our life.
So it's like glycine, like the double, right?
Yeah, like, so glycine has an alpha carbon with 2 hydrogens. So the R group is a hydrogen, good. And it makes it achiral, good. So now that's one is easy like that. So the maltose has 2 glucoses. Okay, lactose. Lactose, the sugar of milk, is made up of glucose, and it's got to be one of these guys now.
Oh, you said.
Oh, we just said
Galactose, yeah, galactose. Good, no problem. So galactose. So you know from the name, lactose, galactose. So lactose is made up of glucose and galactose. Glucose and galactose. Then the last one, what's left?
Fructose.
Fructose. So who's gonna make up sucrose for me? Glucose and fructose. I promise you all that on the exam. What are the 2 disaccharides that make up sucrose? You tell me these are glucose and fructose. What are the disaccharides that make up for me lactose? Glucose and galactose. What are the disaccharides that make up for me maltose? It's a double glucose. Yeah.
It's like a mirror.
So we're going up. We're not, remember, these guys are mono. These guys are 1. These guys are 1. These guys are 1. We paired them up. So we're going up. So when we connected these amino acids, that bond is known as a peptide bond. When you connect these guys, glucose and fructose, like that. Glucose and glucose, like that. When you connect glucose and galactose, like that, does that bond have a name?
Glycolytic bond.
Glycolytic bond. Good try, but wrong.
No?
What's the name of this bond that binds together these 2 monosaccharides? I'm going to ask you the same way I asked you, what's the name of the bond that joins together the 2 amino acids? These are the peptide bonds. What are the bonds that join together for me the 2 monosaccharides?
I feel like you told us this before.
Yeah.
I heard you say dimer earlier. It's not that?
So it's a dimer because 2 of them. But how did they dimerize? What's the name of the bond? That's a dimer. That's a dimer too. The 2 amino acids are a dimer, but they are connected by a peptide bond.
I thought you said it was a glycolytic.
It's not glycolytic. It's glycosidic.
Glycosidic.
Glycosidic. Yeah, that's a glycosidic bond. This bond here, this oxygen in the middle, is glycosidic bond. Very close. If you have seen it in the answer choice, you would have been spotting it. But now I'm gonna put. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm gonna do now. I'm gonna put which of the following is the name of the bond that's gonna join together the two monosaccharides. It doesn't matter which one. Any one of them. It could be glucose and glucose. As long as you're a monomer, the same way. These Did the peptide bond care if this was glutamic acid and this was glycine, or if this was tyrosine and this was methionine? It's just a peptide bond. So the same thing, that's the glycosidic bond. It don't matter if it's between fructose, but no glycosidic bond between like sucrose and one of these guys. So it has to, they connect the monomers.
Glycosidic?
Glycosidic, yes. Glyco-Si. Not acidic, glycosidic. Okay, this glycosidic bond. Okay, this glycosidic bond is how we make the chain. When we break the glycosidic bond. When we doing amino acids, we join together the peptide bond and we break them together by breaking the peptide bond. So in this direction, I'm going up. I'm going up from monosaccharide to disaccharide. What's that?
Anabolism.
Anabolism. Excellent. That's anabolism. I'm joining.
Oh, building up.
And then I'm gonna build up some more. So I'm not done with disaccharides. I gotta go up, and then we have polysaccharide. Polysaccharide. And the 3 polysaccharides you need to know are glycogen, starch, excellent,
yes.
excellent. Starch,
Chitin.
starch, 2 glycogen, starch, and the last one is glycogen, starch, and the last one is
Chitin, chitin.
chitin.
Oh,
Chitin,
maybe something.
it is not a polymer of sugar. Chitin is a form of cellulose.
Oh,
Excellent.
okay.
Excellent. Chitin is a form of fungal structural layer that protects, is like an umbrella, is like a capsule that protects the fungi eukaryotes from outside. So, and then you have your cellulose. A question on the exam. What are the 3 polysaccharides? Cellulose, starch, and glycogen. Excellent. What are the 3 disaccharides? Lactose, fructose, and maltose.
Okay, but,
Wait. You said disaccharides is lactose, sucrose, and maltose.
Yeah, you see they dimer.
I could have sworn you just said fructose, but it's
Yeah.
all
Oh,
good.
my fault. Maybe I did. Okay, and then you see these are so in metabolism of carbohydrates, we go up and down. We need energy. Break down cellulose, break down starch, break down glycogen into these dimers, then into these monosaccharides. We want to build up. We have too many of them. You ate pancake, but you're not burning it. So we're gonna store. We're gonna go up from glucose into we're gonna store it in the form of glycogen. So we're gonna stack them up together, make maltose, stack them up. Same thing for proteins. Break up all the amino acids. If I'm catabolizing, add up all the amino acids. If I'm anabolizing, here, this free fatty acid, break it up. If I want energy, assemble it and put it in adipose tissue, big belly, when I am anabolizing, when I am storing. Okay? And nucleic acids. I need ATP, store up, put on the hanger, put on the closet, phosphate. I need it, I break down. So I need you to just have a mental picture of how we go up and down, break down and build up, break down and build up. Is that clear?
Yeah, right.
So these are my monosaccharides, these are my disaccharides, and these are my polysaccharides. Now let's see the way. Why is there no?
Gray? No, I don't know. White, maybe. I don't know if there are more white. I don't know. That looks empty. Maybe outside. Maybe there's outside white.
You know?
You don't have to. Have to clean. You guys are okay. What?
Word.
You're doing great.
Word, bro.
Oh, that
You just stop, bro.
break them down. Yeah.
Now I gotta worry about my.
Plus that's
Word.
Yeah. And they're gone. Positive. Banana?
Very high.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. The piano that you're going to give me.
You hanging off the dead life over there, bro.
There's Jack. You ever seen her, Jack?
Thank you for the air.
You said you're so friendly.
I love the friend. Let them know that was the very.
No, I heard my neck.
I'm not saying that's not ruining it, but.
Writing my spine. I don't know what I said. No, I go fast. And the helmet is like, not good.
Oh, yeah.
The aerodynamic. Yeah, it seems like a rabbit. Then I got a rabbit.
Okay, guys. What's happening? Why are you guys talking?
Waiting on you.
Okay, all right. So let's pay attention. Where are you going to be by talking? Okay. All right, guys. Let's now move on to the next phase. So we have to have a good understanding of exergonic, endergonic. So if I have a bond, we already proved where we see that bond. We see that bond everywhere. We see it in protein. We see it in amino acids. We see it in sugars. We see it in nucleic acids. We see it in fatty acids. Now when I break this bond, and when I say GIBS, that's what led me to go through all that loop so we can come back to this. This GIBS, free energy, delta G, represents what? What does it mean when I am delta G positive delta G? What does it mean when I'm minus delta G negative?
Negative G is releasing of the energy and the other one's building.
Excellent. So which one is exergonic? Is it the positive delta G or negative delta G? Excellent. That's exergonic. What is the positive delta G? That is a endergonic. Excellent. This bond is a double bond. This bond is a single bond. Now, when I say delta G, when I say exergonic, when I say endergonic, what does that mean? That means I'm describing the state of energy in my bond. If I say it's endergonic, my bond has energy. The fridge is full. The closet has a lot of clothes. When I say exergonic, that means it's empty. I took the energy out. So exergonic, the bond has no energy. Endergonic, the bond has energy waiting on you, ready for you to break it down. No bond, no energy. So for example, if I have a bond between glucose and a glycosidic bond between glucose and glucose. Who is that, by the way? Glucose and glucose.
It's the maltose.
Maltose. So now, is this reaction of joining them together and making a bond between them, is that endergonic or exergonic?
Endergonic.
Kareem, is that endergonic or exergonic? Think about it. So what am I saying? When we say endergonic and exergonic, endergonic means I'm just describing. My bond has energy waiting on you so you can break it, use it for catabolism.
Yeah, so the energy, when you say endergonic, the energy is inside.
It's already there waiting for you to break it.
Yeah.
But catabolism, exergonic, the energy is broken. So you took the energy, it's gone. The bank account is empty. That's why it's minus.
Yeah.
So exergonic is describing the state of the energy account. If it's minus, you're withdrawn. You took the energy, it's gone out. You withdrew the energy, it's minus, overdrawn. But plus is stacked, it's full of energy. So who do you think is going to be delta G? My polymers or my monomers? My polymers are going to be plus delta G. I'm having a lot of bond. Is when I break them, then I get the energy to come out. So this here, glucose and glucose, that is a perfect example of endergonic. They are stacked together. So this is endergonic. So I break this bond. When I break this bond, I cleave it. When I cleave this bond, when I break this bond, when I cleave this bond, when I break this bond, when I cleave this bond, when I break this bond, then the energy is gonna come out. I'm gonna get energy, so that's minus delta G exergonic. I'm gonna ask you about that on the exam. I'm gonna tell you that if a bond is broken, a bond who's a part of any of my macromolecules, it don't have to be sugar. It could be a triacylglycerol, like the one we drew with the fats. It could be a protein polymer of many amino acids. It could be a nucleic acid bond between the phosphates. It could be a bond between my monomers and dimers to give me a polysaccharide. No matter where this is, I break it. What's gonna happen to the delta G? It's minus delta G. Is that endergonic or exergonic? Exergonic. Does the bond have energy? Not anymore. Who took the energy? You. So when you're running the marathon, what's happening? The bond is broken or being stored?
Broken.
It's broken. So you're getting the delta G to supply, help you run the marathon. But when you eat the pancake and you're not breaking, you don't need energy. You're just laying down. Laying down does not need any energy.
That's endergonic.
That's endergonic. So now your body's going to be stacking up. Hey, there's a lot of glucose. Let's make a polymer of glucose. Let's make a polymer of nucleic acids. Let's make a polymer of fatty acids. Let's make a polymer of carbohydrates. That's the state your body's going to enter, in a state of anabolism, endergonic. This is so important. How do I break down? I break down with water sometimes, like hydrolysis. 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 Lysis is breaking. I break down using water. Hydrolysis. But do I only break down with water?
You can use
You said dehydration too, right?
So dehydration is water. That's the same thing. Hydrolysis. Oh, no. Dehydration is when I build up.
Yeah.
Dehydration is when I remove. Remember when I drew here, one give me OH, one give me H, so the water come out. I dehydrate, I remove water, then
And
they...
that's to bring water in, basically.
Yeah, but that's to break using water. So here, I'm going to add a OH here, and I'm going to add a H here. So I added plus water, I separated. That's one of the ways I break. So now if I want to break down my macromolecules, I only use water, hydrolysis, nothing else. What about heat? Yeah, excellent. So heat, if I want to break the bond. So now that's how it's going to get tricky. If I want to break a bond, and I break a bond, what do? I break it down with heat. So that is endothermic. So I put inside heat. I break it with heat. Like ice. You know, ice is crystallattice. Ice is so structured like that. That's ice, right? The bonds are so close. You heat up ice, it's gonna get so fluid. It's gonna get so fluidy. So fluid. Now the liquid is gonna be like liquid, 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 liquid. You see? You heat it up even more, that's gonna be like, let's say this is ice, that's 0 degrees Celsius. You heat it up, now it's 50 degrees Celsius. Now you boil it even more. Now it's like the bonds are is like gas. So now the bonds are like, you know, the water now is gonna start becoming a gas. So the bonds are gonna get really weak. The bonds are gonna get really weak, and you're gonna have some form of. So now, the more you heat up, 100 degrees Celsius, that's boiling. That's boiling. That's the boiling point. So now, the more heat you add, the more you break the bonds. So here, when you put heat inside to break the bond, that's endothermic. Endothermic. So how do I get exergonic? I break the bond by hydrolysis or by adding heat inside the bond to break it, and that's endothermic. Endothermic, the heat is known as enthalpy. Enthalpy. That is known as delta H. Enthalpy. Enthalpy. Delta H. Positive delta H. Positive delta H. Enthalpy. Positive delta H. So an exergonic reaction, we achieve it by hydrolysis, by adding water, or we achieve it by increasing the enthalpy delta H, that is endothermic, plus delta H, endothermic. I add heat, I add plus delta H to break the bond so I can liberate and get out energy minus delta G, Gibbs energy. So I use plus H to get minus G. I use plus H, I add heat to break the bond so I can get the energy to come out and minus free energy to come out. So we use endothermic reaction to get exergonic energy. We use hydrolysis to get exergonic reaction. Okay? Same thing in here. Here, the heat, so going from ice into liquid, into gas, going from ice into liquid, into gas, that is supplying heat, adding heat, supplying heat, adding heat. That's endothermic. That's all of that going in this direction. If you're going in this direction, if you are going in this direction, you're adding heat. You're adding delta H. That's endothermic. You're adding hot temperature, endothermic. But if you're going in the other direction, now, you increase the temperature. When you increase the temperature, you reduce the heat. So you take out the heat, minus delta H. So you remove the heat. That's exothermic. Exothermic. So when exothermic reaction, you remove the heat between the gas bonds, they become liquid. You remove more heat between the liquid molecules, you get crystallitis, you get ice. So you remove heat, so the heat is gonna come out. That's minus delta H, that is exothermic. Heat come out. Add heat, endothermic. Remove heat, exothermic. So how does the heat happen? When you put really hot liquid in the fridge, does the cold go inside the hot boiling water, or does the heat from the hot boiling water go out into the fridge?
How is that?
Yeah, the heat comes out. Somebody once told me that, the cold gets in the hot. No, cold does not exist. It is the heat. So being cold is actually low heat. We're not supposed to say I'm cold. We're supposed to say I'm really not hot. That's how it is, because there is heat energy. It's not cold energy. Yes.
I was watching a survival show, and they were saying that if you're ever stranded in the woods or something, don't lay on the bare ground, because the heat the ground is cold, out of your body. You go into hypothermia just from laying down.
Yeah, that's true. So that's what we're gonna get to. Now, heat energy is gonna flow from area of a high heat, that boiling water is gonna go into the fridge. So the fridge is cold. So when you have two slabs, one is really hot, one is like 500 degrees Celsius, so hot, and one is 100 degrees Celsius. You attach them together, what's gonna happen? Heat is gonna flow excellent from an area of a high pressure to an area of a low pressure through the process known as diffusion. Now it's gonna flow forever until they become 600 on one side and 0 on the other side. Is that what's gonna end up to? What is it gonna be? 300. So you're gonna even out. 500 plus 100 is 600. 600 divided by 2, that's 300. 300, 300, 300. So that happened because the heat flew from an area of a high heat to an area of a low heat. But in the fridge is so cold, heat is gonna keep going out and out until it's completely gone, because the fridge is not stable temperature. It keeps getting colder and colder. So the heat keeps on being removed. The heat, and you know, in your car, so this energy shift from one form to another. When we do physics, you're gonna see in thermodynamics. So you know, when you go to your car, that gasoline, that is chemical energy. That's gasoline. When you start the ignition, ignite. So what's gonna happen? You're gonna convert the chemical energy in gasoline into heat. It's gonna blow up. So when this gasoline is like explosion, when you that's explosion. When this explosion happens, it's gonna now move the piston of the transmission. So now you shift from chemical energy to explosion, heat energy, into rotation, kinetic energy. Excellent. So now the pistons start moving, rotating the wheels. Rotating the wheels, your car start moving. So now you shifted from chemical energy into heat energy into mechanical or kinetic energy. In the waterfall, Niagara Falls, what happens is the waterfall is coming down. It's coming down. So as it's coming down, they put a rotor. They put a rotor blade. And this rotor, as the water is striking it, is causing it to spin. So it's spinning. This rotor is spinning as the waterfall goes down, it's spinning. So when it's spinning, they have a wire inside. They have an electric wire and a big magnet solenoid. So when the electric wire is spinning around the solenoid, that creates electric energy. Excellent. So you know, we don't just say energy. What kind of energy? Is it heat energy? Is it mechanical energy? Is it kinetic energy? Is it chemical energy? Is it electrical energy? That is electric energy. Then we can use the electric energy to get whatever. You will see this even in your own body with the action potential, your nervous system. Your nervous system plays with these electrolytes. Calcium is plus charge, potassium plus charge, sodium is plus charge, chlorine is minus charge. So you keep on shifting across the plasma membrane. Keep on shifting across the plasma membrane, changing the membrane voltage. Bless you. Changing the membrane voltage. And as the membrane voltage changes, then you get an excitable tissue. The tissue is excited. What kind of tissue we have in the body?
Cardiac.
We have, no, that's not a tissue. That is, that's a tissue, but when we classify tissues, we classify them based on type and based on cell shape. Okay. Like there are 4 types of tissues. Yes, there is organ. Yeah, squamous is the shape of the cell. Is it squamous, columnar, cuboidal? We're not talking about the shape.
Integumentary
Connectivity.
You're taking about, that's the tissue I'm talking about. Connective tissue, nervous tissue, muscle tissue, and epithelial tissue. Excellent, epithelial tissue. So these are the types of the tissues. Now my muscle tissue and my nervous tissue are excitable. Connective tissue is not excitable. Epithelial tissue is not excitable. But even though the muscular tissue and the nervous tissue are both excitable, once they get excited, they do different things. Once my nervous tissue is excited, it relays information with voltage change. And remember they said the input and the integration and the output. But when my muscle tissue is excited, it doesn't relay voltage change, it doesn't relay input. What does it do? Contract. Excellent. It contracts, gets smaller. So these are the tissues. So I'm using that electric energy. Your car uses electric energy from the battery. Turn on the light. We use electric energy in that waterfall to create an electric station for the whole neighborhood. And your body uses electric energy to make action potential. So this energy has to flow from area. So here, if I replace 500 degrees Celsius with 500 millivolt, and I have one slab that has 500 millivolt and one slab that has 100 millivolt, and I stuck them together, it's going to say, no, that's only for temperature. they will even out at how much?
Same, 300.
300 millivolt. 300 millivolt. So as long as your energy, you're gonna equilibrate in equilibrium. You're gonna equilibrate at equilibrium, which is the between a steady state between both molecules. So here now the energy is exergonic if I break it with hydrolysis or I break it with endothermic heat energy. Heat energy. Now if I'm going in the opposite direction, now I don't want to go there. Now I want to go back. I don't want to catabolize endothermic. I want to anabolize. So what do? Build up using what kind of energy? Endothermic or exothermic?
No, endo, right?
Endo is I add heat. Endo I put in heat in. That's endo. Endo is when I put heat in. Endergonic when I put energy in. Endergonic when I put energy in the bond. Endothermic when I put heat in the bond. So when I put heat in the bond, it breaks. When I put heat in the bond, it breaks. When I put energy in the bond, it builds up. So they don't go together. You cannot have endergonic, endothermic. Doesn't go together. You have endothermic, it breaks because you put heat in. You put heat in the ice, it's gonna break into liquid and gas. So endothermic, exergonic. Endothermic, exergonic. Exothermic, endergonic. So you have to know that one. So you going that way, endothermic, exergonic, coming back this way, that's exothermic. I remove the heat from the bond, and then the bonds stick together, and that is known as delta G positive, and that is known as endergonic. So now I know how I break my bond, and when I break it, I'm gonna be able to tell on the exam. You gotta know delta G. What is delta G minus? Exergonic. What is delta G positive? Endergonic. What is delta H positive? Endothermic. What is delta H negative? Exothermic. How do they combine? I store energy in my bond. Endergonic by removing heat. Exothermic. I remove energy from my bond. Exergonic by breaking the bond and adding heat in. Endothermic. And you gotta know the charges. Plus delta H, endothermic. Plus delta G, endergonic. Minus delta H, exothermic. Minus delta G, exergonic. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to how your body, when you eat a polymer of sugar, when you eat a polymer of sugar, you eat starch, when you eat starch, or when you eat so glycogen is stored in the liver. Glycogen is stored.
Oh, I did, but then I eat them. I'll have to order. It's not happening. You bring me a banana.
Like this lesson is so much easier than the first lesson. I get this lesson completely. Bro, come on with me, bro. I understand it, bro.
Okay.
It's good to understand, bro.
Look, please. You see that the Jamaican sugar? You heard it, right?
Oh, the cane sugar. They have it everywhere. Thailand, Sri Lanka.
We leave at 8:15?
Okay. 8:15.
8:15?
8:15.
8:20?
Okay.
8:20?
Okay. Let's see. Let's get. Okay. Please understand that this glycemia, this glycemic index, is describing the state of sugar in our blood. So we do not want hyperglycemia. Glycemia, that's too much sugar, that's dangerous, that's stressful condition. And we also do not want hypo, minus, too little, hypoglycemia. Now that is too low, We want the green range, and that is known as euglycemia. Euglycemia. This is the region. This is the healthy region. So this is red, like a traffic light. Red, stop. So too little, problem. Too much, problem. Green is where we need to be. And between each two stages is the yellow. So think of this orange as yellow. This is your adaptation range. So your body fight back. So when your sugar is too low, your body will enter the yellow. Traffic light, red, yellow, green. So we need to be in green. So if your sugar went too high, your body is gonna start, trying to cope with that. Your body is equipped with built-in systems that repair this deviation in glycemic index, the deviation in the sugar, to repair the deviation in sugar amount in your body, the glycemic index. So this ties back with hemoglobin. This hemoglobin is a marker for diabetes. So patients who have HbA1c, this is known as hemoglobin A1c. What is HbA1c? Hemoglobin A1c, this you need to know as a nurse. HbA1c. That is the amount of red blood cells that are stained with sugar. I mean, you eat so much sugar, or maybe there is so much sugar in your body that's starting to paint and get stuck to the red blood cells. So what are the levels? If the level, and this is a percentage, HbA1c is a percentage. If the percentage is up to 5.5, if you are up to 5.5%, if your HbA1c is up to 5.5, you are healthy. You have nothing to worry about. If you are from 5.5, you go up and now you become 6.4%. This is not diabetes. This is pre-diabetes. This is pre-diabetes. Pre-diabetes.
Isn't it from 6.0 to 6.0?
It's from 6.5 on upward, that's when diabetes starts.
Okay.
So from 6.7, from 5.6, so 5.5, you're healthy. 5.6, then the problems begin. It's from 5.6, it's from 5, so to be precise, it's 5.6. When you go from 5.6 up to 6.4, that is pre-diabetes. And you have no problem classifying that as first stage pre-diabetes, grade 1 pre-diabetes, level 1 pre-diabetes. You have fun with that. But you divide those. But 5.6 is the lowest range, and 6.4 is the highest range. Then you go to 6.5, you are now a diabetic patient. That is diabetes. That is diabetes. If you go up from 6.5 to 7.5, that's diabetes, grade or level 2. So now you're gonna, 1 is from 6.5 on upward.
Okay.
when you hit 7.5, you're going to have diabetes grade 1 or level 1. When you go from 7.5 up to 8.6, you go to 8.6, and that is known as diabetes grade or level 2. And from 8.6 to 9.6, that's grade 3 or level 3 diabetes. And from above that, you need insulin. No more metformin. So all of this, you take metformin. So pre-diabetes, some of the patients, depending on their age and their health condition, they can start taking metformin 500 milligrams. Unless you have kidney failure, you don't never take metformin. Metformin is contraindicated for patients who have kidney failure. So then you go, and then when you go above 8.6, so they keep on increasing the metformin for you from 500 to 1,000 to 2,000. But then it gotta get to a level where you need insulin. Like, you know, you cannot be like 11 or that's crazy. I have met somebody with 14 or 13. That's crazy. Yeah, that's dangerous. That's dangerous. Okay, so now that's an example of what? That's an example of hyperglycemia. That's an example of hyperglycemia. Yes?
Real quick, you said after diabetes, what is the diabetes what?
Grade 1 or level 1.
Okay, yeah.
That's grade 2 or level 2. Okay.
And then the other one is grade 3. And
Yeah.
after that is
Yeah. But this is like, general, it's not like set in stone. Like one book will say 7.5 is level 3. Another book will say, no, it's 9.5. But in the end, you know, you're going upward, it's getting worse. You're going downward, it's getting better until you like reverse. Then if you go below, like, if you go below 4, go below 4 or 3.5, that's hypoglycemia. So now it's another problem. Now it's the inverse problem. Somebody suffering from too much glycemia, somebody suffering from too little, from hypoglycemia. Both are stressful. So you must understand that if you're suffering from hyper, let's begin with the first stress, and you see how your body restores that. That's very important. You begin with hyperglycemia. That is plus, too much sugar. That's hyperglycemia. That's too much sugar. This hyperglycemia is a form of an input. That's an input. It's first of all gonna be detected by a sensor. So a sensor, an alarm is going to detect it. How many kinds of alarms we have in our body? We have an osmoreceptor to detect changes in osmolarity. Osmoreceptor. We have chemoreceptors to detect chemicals like hypercalcemia, hypocalcemia, hyperglycemia, hypoglycemia, magnesemia, and so on. And then you have thermoreceptors. Then you have mechanoreceptors. They sense stretch. Thermoreceptors. They sense heat. Chemoreceptors. They taste the blood. It's too salty. They taste the blood. It's too much calcium. Too much sugar. Too sweet. Too little sugar. Too acidic. Too basic. These are the chemoreceptors. They're very important. They're always tasting the blood. So now who's going to detect that my blood has hyperglycemia, too much sugar? Chemoreceptors. So the osmoreceptors. So the glucose is later on going to change the state of osmolarity, but that's going to be detected with water. So if the blood volume increases, then that's going to be detected with the distension in the tissue, the edema, or maybe some form of the blood volume getting increased inside the blood vessel, stretching the blood vessels. But who's going to test the chemical is the chemoreceptors. Then the chemoreceptor is going to send a signal The chemoreceptor is going to send a signal to the integrator. The integrator here is the pancreas. So the pancreas, your pancreas, what's going on? Why are you guys talking? The pancreas is going to be the pancreas that looks like that. The pancreas is my integrator, my computer center. The pancreas is going to detect if there is an increase or a decrease in sugar level. So here is going to get an input, is going to get an input signal. There's so much sugar. The blood sugar has increased. So it's going to send a correcting U-turn, a correcting output. So it's going to receive an input, it's going to receive an input, and it's going to generate an output. It's going to receive an input, and it's going to generate an output. The output is always going to be the opposite of the input. If you're talking feedback, negative feedback, if you're talking negative feedback, we want to restore homeostasis. If we're so hot, that's the input. The output is going to be secret sweat, so I can cool. That's the opposite. Or if I'm too cold, I'm going to shiver, so I can warm up and heat up. So if the output is the opposite of my input, that's negative feedback. If my output is the opposite of my input, that's negative feedback. But sometimes you do have positive feedback. Like when a baby is pushing through the cervix, and the more the baby pushes with his head, that stretch signal is going to be traveling up to the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus has a nucleus that's going to secrete, it's going to secrete to the posterior pituitary. So the hypothalamus is going to send a signal to the posterior pituitary. Then the posterior pituitary is going to secrete oxytocin. Oxytocin is going to push the baby out some more. So the baby gets pushed out more. So here the output and the input, they're not opposite. They are amplified in the same direction. So that's positive feedback. But we can never use positive feedback for homeostasis. I mean, imagine a patient coming into the emergency room and they have so much blood sugar, and you give them glucagon. And now they get even more blood sugar. So now they have diabetes grade 1, now they have grade 2. And you keep giving them glucagon grade 3 till they have a coma. So that's positive feedback. So positive feedback never goes with homeostasis. Positive feedback is vicious, repetitive, intense cycles that keep on repeating. We don't want that. We want to reverse. So that's negative feedback. But we want positive feedback with like a baby coming out, pushing the cervix. We want positive feedback with platelet plug. I mean, I'm bleeding, a gunshot wound. I want my platelets to stick up as much as they can. Positive feedback. One, unload hemoglobin, unloading to the tissue. One, oxygen cooperativity. The other one follows. The third one won't follow. That's positive feedback. So we need positive feedback sometime, not in homeostasis. Okay, it's not like when you're hot, you say positive feedback, and now I'm even more hot. No, you're gonna die. Or you're too cold, you say I'm so cold, I want positive feedback. Now you're gonna get even colder, so you're gonna die. So you want to do the opposite. If you're cold, you want to be hot. If you're hot, you want to be cold. So you want to do the opposite in order to repair. So here there's hyperglycemia. That's my input. That means my output is going to be hypoglycemia. So now the output is going to be insulin, and insulin is going to cause the sugar. Insulin is going to cause the sugar to be secreted. The sugar to be secreted from our sugar store, which is the insulin is going to cause sugar uptake from the blood, because where's the hyperglycemia coming from? It's the blood. Who's suffering from hyperglycemia or hypoglycemia? The blood, because we said who's being tasted so much extra sugar? It's the blood. So I have too much sugar, I need to take away sugar from the blood into the muscle and into my liver. So that's gonna secrete insulin, and insulin is gonna go to the plasma membrane of the liver and pluck in glutes. pluck in glutes. So these glutes, what is a glute? A glute is glucose transporter. Glucose transporter. And it's going to start bringing glucose in from the blood into the storage tissue, being the liver and the skeletal muscles. So sugar come in, and then I'm gonna build up my sugar.
Do we need to know what glute transport, which one, 2 and 4?
No. Just know that insulin, when you add it, you pluck in a lot of glutes, and the glucose, they just keep on bringing the glucose inward. But it's good that you know they come in different types. But except in the brain, the nerve tissue needs no.
It's the only way.
It needs no sugar. The brain doesn't need
no
sugar.
Transporter.
It doesn't need transporter. It's open. The brain is like that. The brain is like this. You have sugar, it's open. It's gonna enter. It doesn't even need a gate. It doesn't need a transporter. So the brain is the only tissue that does not need a transporter. Yeah.
I wanted to make sure. So insulin will take away sugar, like they will
Yeah.
sugar down.
Yeah. How? So you're not gonna remember it unless you link it with how does that happen? How does it happen? So it's gonna do the central dogma of biology. It's gonna go it's gonna go in the DNA, do transcription. It's gonna give me an mRNA. When I translate the mRNA, I'm gonna get a what? I'm gonna get a protein who's a channel, the glute. That's a channel. So the insulin is gonna make a lot of protein channels that you're gonna put them in the membrane, and they're gonna start sucking in the glucose from blood into the skeletal muscle tissue. So you cannot remember it unless you link it to how it happens. So what does insulin do? Insulin is going to trigger a transcription factor that's going to go in the nucleus, cause mRNA to be transcribed from the DNA, and then this mRNA is going to be translated, and obviously the ribosome is going to translate for me a protein who's going to be a channel. The ribosome is not only going to translate hemoglobin. It's not only going to translate some enzyme that's going to speed up some reaction. It can translate a protein channel. That's a protein. That's an enzyme too. So the insulin is going to make a lot of channels so you can pluck them and put them. You see what I did here? Pluck them. Put glute. When you put a lot of glute, sugar is going to flow in through them. But before insulin, the membrane had no glutes. So the sugar cannot get in. So when you eat a lot of sugar, insulin is going to get secreted. When insulin gets secreted, you put a lot of glutes, then glucose is going to diffuse from the blood into the liver, diffuse from the blood into the muscle, through the glutes. That's why patients who have pancreatic failure or they have diabetes type 1, their pancreas is not working. What happens now is there is a lot, when they eat sugar, there is a lot of sugar in their body, but there is no insulin. So the sugar is out in the blood. It cannot get in because there's no glute. Why there's no glute? Because no mRNA to be translated to give me glute. Why there's no mRNA? Because there is no insulin. Insulin is the one who causes the transcription of the mRNA for the glute, and the glutes are going to be translated and going to be put in the membrane, in the plasma membrane. The opposite is the glucagon. So now we're gonna start taking with glutes sugar into the tissue, and we're gonna reduce this hyperglycemia into a state of euglycemia. If I'm suffering from the opposite now, here was hyperglycemia. Now is the opposite. I have hypoglycemia. If I'm suffering from hypoglycemia, minus, the glycemia is so low. So a sensor, an alarm is going to detect that there is a severe drop, a severe drop in sugar level. This severe drop in sugar level is going to be detected by a form of chemoreceptor. A form of chemoreceptor. This chemoreceptor is going to detect that there is a drop in sugar. It's going to send an input, always sending an input to the pancreas, which is my computer. The pancreas is my computer. It's going to detect there is a drop in sugar level. Then we're going to generate an output. And this output, we're going to generate an output, and this output is going to be to secrete glucagon now. Now imagine the patient has no sugar in their body, they have hypoglycemia, and then you secrete insulin. So now the hypoglycemia is going to drop. So now you're going to have hypoglycemia grade 2, grade 3 hypoglycemia until the patient has another coma. So you're going to have coma either way, from hyperglycemia or hypoglycemia. And then you're going to move on from the hypoglycemia, you're going to move on and you're going to secrete glucagon. So glucagon is going to be secreted from the effector, and that's my pancreas. So here my pancreas was 2 in 1. It was my integrator and it was my effector. So it sent out this hormone glucagon, and glucagon caused the opposite. So before in insulin, we bring in glucose into the storage sites. We bring in glucose into the storage site. But here we're going to release it. Send glucose out. We're going to send glucose out. Okay? So now our blood has hypoglycemia. Now sugar is coming out. And I'm restoring my sugar level. So you have to have a good understanding of how hyperglycemia and hypoglycemia is restored. So after now we have went through how we restore the glycemic index. We don't want hyperglycemia. We don't want hypoglycemia. We want euglycemia. You gotta know in which situation insulin come out. What does it do? Insulin comes out when there's too much sugar. And what does it do? It causes glucose transporters to be put on a cell membrane so we can absorb sugar from the blood, because we have so much sugar in the blood, to reduce the sugar from the blood. And the opposite, when is glucagon released? Glucagon is released when there is a drop in blood sugar known as hypoglycemia, and it's going to secrete what are the sugar sites in our body? The sugar sites in our body are known as the sugar storage warehouse is your liver and your skeletal muscle. So you gotta know, I promise you, insulin and glucagon is part of your questions on the exam. So you have to master really well when they are secreted.
Sugar storage is in the liver and where?
Skeletal muscle. Okay, now
There's more?
there's a lot more. What are you talking about? There is a lot more. Actually, according to your syllabus, we're now doing we're chilling. What you saw, this is like super. They wanted you to memorize the glycolytic pathway. I'm not gonna do that, but you have to memorize, like for example, the first committed step. That one you gotta know it. The committed step where once glucose enters, the glycolytic pathway is no going back. It's like when you enter the highway. You cannot go back. You have to wait till the exit so you can get out. So now we're gonna move on to see what happens. Somebody said I am tired.
Yeah, I remember we've been here since 8 in the
I've been here since 5 in the morning. Not here in some other clues, but 5 in the morning. Okay, so let me just say one last thing, but next time, please come prepared. We cannot leave before 9. I promise. We cannot leave before 9. Okay? You guys just be patient so we can understand. So then you don't say, I don't understand. Let me put it here so you can go home, watch it as... Okay. This is one. There's going to be another one in the weekend. So just be... be just okay. Like I said, we're gonna have to be patient. This is gonna end in September, but let's just be patient.
In September?
I mean December. See, I'm forgetting how to talk. So
And our next exam is how many questions?
our next exam is 50. Always 50.
Alright, cool. I like that.
So always 50. I wanted to do like a middle ground. I wanted 100, you wanted 50, I'll do 75. But maybe the final. The final 75.
Alright, the final year. Final year. Final year.
Okay.
No, for the final year.
But anyways, even if I make it 100, it's actually good for you because in the end it's more points and it's gonna be on the videos and the study guide. So I'm not gonna test you. Okay, 50. Okay, no problem. No.
Nah, he got one more thing.
No, you cannot go now. You can go at 9. You cannot go now. I already compromised 50 questions. 50 questions. No. Okay. Please. We don't want to miss the wealth of information. Okay, so sugar. Sugar has entered. Sugar has entered my body. How does the sugar enter? Does it enter in the form of glucose?
No.
It does not enter in the form of glucose. It enters in the form of a polysaccharide. Who is the first one to digest it? So how does glucose, when we want to metabolize protein, we want to metabolize fatty acids, we want to metabolize sugars, we want to metabolize nucleic acids. What do? There's two types of breakdown. There is mechanical breakdown, mechanical churning, chopping up. So this carbohydrate, this big pancake, we are chewing on it. That's mechanical chopping. And also your stomach is full of HCl, hydrochloric acid. That's mechanical breakdown. But mechanical breakdown is not enough. You need chemical breakdown. So there are enzymes. You gotta know this one. That's amylase. So amylase is an enzyme. Amylase is a very important enzyme for the breakdown of polysaccharides. This enzyme, as we have learned, all the enzymes from the Christian Anfinsen Nobel Prize experiment, that all these enzymes, they have to have an optimal. They have to have an optimal temperature and optimal pH. So when you look at an enzyme in your stomach, like trypsin, that need a pH of 1. Really, really acidic. But the amylase need a pH in the mouth that is around, how much amylase?
6 or 7.
The pH of amylase in the mouth is 7. So if you put trypsin at pH 7 and you put amylase at pH 1, what's gonna happen? Both are not, because what's gonna happen to them?
Denature.
They're gonna denature. Excellent. They're gonna fold back. They're gonna backward. Okay, so amylase is gonna start breaking down. So it is so early. We break down sugars as early as in the mouth. This saliva has amylase. So we don't wait till we get to the stomach so we can break down carbohydrates. It begins in the mouth. Please remember that amylase is also called oral amylase because it's secreted in the mouth. So this oral amylase receives these carbohydrates and it breaks them down. Then when amylase gets inside our body, what happens is now we need to reabsorb it, because remember, I tell my students, we are hollow from outside and we are hollow from inside. So when you take a tablet that's 500 milligrams, do you think the 500 milligrams go inside your blood? No. So the bioavailable, the bioactive substance is going to be, for example, 100 milligrams. And the rest is going to get excreted. So the 400 that got excreted has actually never made it to the body, technically. Because you're not in the body unless you got absorbed. So that's why people who have lactose intolerance, they drink the milk and they diarrhea it out. Because they lack the enzyme that breaks down lactose, this lactase that breaks down lactose. So this enzyme, they don't have it, they cannot digest lactose. So the milk that entered through the mouth, even though it entered our body, it went right out. So it actually never made it. You're not in unless you are in the blood. Unless you are in the blood circulation. Unless you are in the blood circulation. Okay. Now we have taken in this form, and remember, I have lactose, and lactose is made up of glucose and galactose, and it's tied together by what kind of bond?
Glycosidic.
Glycosidic bond. And I have sucrose, and it's tied together
Fructose.
by glycosidic bond, and it's tying together glucose and fructose. And lastly, we're going to lactose, sucrose, and then you have maltose. And then you have maltose. And this maltose,
That's glucose 2 times, right?
yeah, that's maltose is glucose 2 times. Glucose and glucose. So what's the name of the enzyme that breaks lactose into 2?
Lactase.
Excellent. Lactase. Lactase. What's the enzyme that breaks down sucrose into glucose and fructose? Sucrase. What's the name of the enzyme that breaks down maltose? It is the maltase. Excellent. Wow, you guys are genius. Wow. Excellent. That's gonna be on the exam. So remember those 3 enzymes. Lactase. It's obvious. Lactase. You know what lactose is made up of? Galactose and glucose. Who break it down? Lactase. Who breaks down sucrose? Sucrase into what? Glucose and fructose. And who breaks down maltose? Maltase, and it breaks it down into glucose and always begin with glucose and glucose because it is on the 3 of them. Okay, so now we're tracking down glucose movement. Glucose is now made it to the blood. We have absorbed glucose because thank you to insulin secreted for us. Not insulin. The pancreas secreted for us insulin. Insulin absorbed for us glucose, and glucose is now making its way from the blood into the tissue. Okay. Now this glucose has made it into the tissue. You can never get ATP from carbohydrates unless you enter the glycolytic pathway. The glycolytic or glycolysis. The glycolytic pathway. The glycolytic pathway. So only, yeah.
So on a test, are you gonna say glycolysis or glycolytic?
Same thing. Glycolysis is the product. It is the process. The pathways can be called glycolytic pathway. Tomato. Glycolysis or glycolytic pathway. So glycolytic pathway, glycolytic pathway, or glycolysis. So the glycolytic pathway is going to take glucose. So after we break down our friends, lactose, we break it down into glucose and galactose. Glucose immediately goes into the glycolytic pathway. Glucose is immediately going to go in the glycolytic pathway. Glucose immediately go into the glycolytic pathway. And you have sucrose, and sucrose is made up of glucose and fructose, and glucose is going to go into the glycolytic pathway. And lastly, you have maltose, and maltose is made up of glucose and
Two times.
glucose. So these two guys, both of them are going to go into the glycolytic pathway. Now the question is, glucose enter into the glycolytic pathway from all of these dimers. What about fructose? What about fructose and galactose?
Are they recycled back?
They get recycled. How? How do they get recycled?
By the enzymes, and then they get turned into the
Again.
isomer glucose.
Excellent.
Oh,
Excellent.
like the other
Because they're
thing.
just a form of glucose, but
Like the
Excellent.
exons and-
isomerized.
So this is called interconversion or isomerization. Excellent. So we're gonna switch from galactose. We're gonna do interconversion from galactose into glucose, then enter the glycolytic pathway. You can never enter the glycolytic pathway. Glycolysis. You can never enter glycolysis as fructose or as galactose. You have to be converted into or interconverted into glucose. So we interconvert fructose and we interconvert fructose and we interconvert galactose into our very important glucose. Okay.
Wait, I'm sorry. You said you can never, fructose and galactose can never enter glycolysis unless what?
Unless we change it. Remember that isomers. Hold on. What's an isomer? An isomer is a different rearrangement, a structural rearrangement. They have the same amount of atoms, same carbons. We just change them differently. We structure them differently. They are the same number of carbon, same number of hydrogen, same number of oxygens. So we convert them differently.
When you convert them, do you need energy to convert them or no?
So who's going to do the job of converting them?
Okay.
It's an enzyme. So does the enzyme work for free? No. So all the enzymes, they need ATP.
Okay, all right.
They need the energy
Okay.
in the form of ATP. Okay, so also remember the formula of carbohydrates look like that. H2NONCN. They always look like that. These are all my carbohydrates. So I'm going to ask you on the exam, which of the following is the formula, the standard formula for the structure of my carbohydrate? Is it C2NHNO2N, CNH2NO? You know how I make my questions. So you're going to see this CH2 with different ends. You got to be able to tell CNH2NON. So now a very important thing for you to understand, and obviously N is on the outside of the bracket. N is here. So this is for general carbohydrates. What about glucose? Glucose is obviously CN, it's a carbohydrate. H2N and ON. What's the value for N for glucose? 6. Excellent.
612.
So now let's solve. Let's replace 6 where the N is. You have carbon, H2 and O. Let's multiply 6 where the N is. There's an N with the carbon. What is 6 times carbon? 6 carbon. There is 2N with the HN. 6 times 2 is 12. 12. 6 times oxygen N. How much? 6. So the formula for glucose is C6H12O6 or CH.
Could you divide
That's
it?
it. Let me leave it like that. Okay,
Yeah.
C6H12O6, and that is my glucose formula. You gotta know your glucose because everybody gotta become it so it can be shunted into the glycolytic pathway. So it's a C6H12O6. O6. So on the exam, which of the following is the formula for glucose? C6H6O12, C12H12, stuff like that, until you get C6H12O6. So that's my glucose. Once my glucose is how many carbon? Glucose is how many carbons? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to cleave it into 2, 3 carbon molecules. Into 2, 3 carbon molecules, known as pyruvate. Pyruvate. Okay, pyruvate. Is this anabolism or catabolism?
Catabolism.
This is catabolism. So now I've broken down 6 carbon molecule into 2 3 carbon molecules. Okay? All right, I'll make a video for you. I'll put the video on the announcement. You have to watch the video. And the homework questions are also going to be released on the weekend along with the video. If you watch the video, you should be able to solve you should be able to solve the homework. But don't think I'm going to solve the homework for you. I'm going to explain to you the concept. You listen to it, then you go and you solve your homework. And you understand all the homework questions. And this, what I did today also, you can go back. It's also going to be on YouTube. You're going to go back, rewatch that, and